enjoy her presentation. Thank you so much for. So good morning, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you for the organizers to invite me. Last time I saw some of you, it was in Montreal, and before that I was here in Padua for my first experience in such a congress or a conference. Back then I was still a student. I was finishing my PhD, and I was introduced to PCP thanks to my supervisor, and Will Davidson, and then Harry Proctor discovered me on Research Day, and he wrote the passage that you can see up. So he suggested that I come and present my work at it was the European Personal Construct Association conference. So when Harry writes to you, you never say no, right? So I came and I presented my work, and I met the community, and I fell in love with the PCP community. And since then, I was, part of the community, despite the fact that I'm not a psychologist. So this is a warning. I'm an education technologist. So I simply use the theory in my work, and this is what I will be sharing with you today. So when I came to present my work, I was working on the integration of refugees. So I was looking at disinformation. I was looking at how youth construe the image of refugees based on the images that were shared online. And again, back then we had disinformation regarding refugees, and refugees were seen as terrorists and as rapists, etc. So I was examining how youth construe their role in this context. And again, why I was interested, and this is something that was shared recently on Facebook. So Kelly did not see human beings as beings who passively respond to the universe, but rather as individuals who actively construct reality and build relationships with that reality. And that was something that really spoke to me. And as you all know, right, it is not something that it's new for you, but I wanted to share this. So according to Kelly, we know that we create constructs based on our interpretation of elements, a thing, an event, an instance, appearance, a situation, a person, a feeling, or any entity we have contact with, and then we use constructs to perceive and understand the world in an attempt to anticipate events and control them. And my question was, what happens when the elements are faked? So how can we construe based on things that are not real? So when we create constructs based on interpretation of faked elements, a fake thing, a fake event, a fake instance of appearance, a fake situation, a fake person, a fake feeling, or any fake entity we have contact with, and then we use these constructs to perceive and understand the world and attempt to anticipate events and control them. When we construe the other based on our interpretation of faked representations of that other. So again, back then, I worked with 42 youth between 18 and 24, and I used Kelly's self-characterization technique, Proctor's PEG, Kelly's, of course, the repertory grid, and Henkel's labyrinth technique, and the Get Ready to Act Against Social Media Propaganda model emerged from the results of my study, where youth went through questioning their position, analyzing their behavior and the behavior of others. They designed their counter-propaganda strategies, prepared themselves, and then evaluated their readiness to do that. But since my project and the work that I have done, we've been living many other crises, right? So we've been living with COVID for the last 2 years. We're living the war in Ukraine. And with these crises, disinformation is also living with us, and it's actually accelerating and becoming more sophisticated and it's evolving. It's evolving in a way that where we can't stop it. Like there is really a very hard time, we have a hard time to stop it. The Director General of the World Health Organization in 2020 shared that we're not just fighting an epidemic, we're fighting an infodemic. Fake news spread faster and more easily than this virus and is just as dangerous. And I think we've all heard about COVID doesn't exist and it's a fake thing and etc. The disinformation regarding the COVID virus led to many violent reactions against the Chinese group, for instance, especially when we started hearing about the Chinese virus. So it's not, again, like disinformation can actually hurt people, like physically and emotionally. And so people were perceiving these groups as the source or the reason why we're all suffering from COVID. But again, so when we talk about disinformation, we're talking about content that is false, manipulated, or fabricated with the deliberate intent to harm individuals, organizations, societies, and economies. When I was doing my PhD work, disinformation was more limited to, working with text, tweets, manipulating images, but with AI, things again evolved. And we're heading towards things that are more that we're calling now the deepfakes. And I'm going to share with you several videos during this presentation so you can really understand what are deepfakes. And this is the first one.
Counteroffensive, you could say, is easier to track. You can see the soldiers, you can see the tanks, you can see who's winning and who's not. But what about the digital offensive? That's a lot harder. For starters, we don't know what is real anymore. Take a look at this video. What do you see? President Zelensky of Ukraine addressing the media, the same green t-shirt, the same background, classic Zelensky. This video was broadcast on Ukrainian TV. But the viewers were in for a surprise, because in this video, Zelensky was not condemning Russia, he was not calling for peace, he was asking his soldiers to surrender. I know it's shocking, except this is not the real Zelensky. This is a deep fake video. It was broadcast on Ukraine TV by Russian hackers. If you look closely, you can notice the difference. His head is too big, his neck is too stiff, plus there is a difference in skin tone. Ukrainian viewers were quick to realize this. Their experts immediately busted the deep fake. Zelensky himself addressed the issue on Instagram. He called it a childish provocation. In this case, he's right. This deep fake was not a good attempt. Cyber experts are calling it a cheap fake. Within hours, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube got it removed. But what if the attempt was better? What if the deep fake was more sophisticated? Well, that is the big worry for both sides. Before we discuss this tech war, let's cover the basics. What exactly is a deep fake? Simply put, it's an artificial media. You can put someone's face on another person's body. You can make them do anything, admit to crimes, spread fake news, anything you want. It's like photoshopping on steroids. This video should give you a better idea.
Killmonger was right. Or Ben Carson is in the sunken place. Or, how about this? Simply, President Trump is a total and complete. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources. It may sound basic, but how we move forward in the age of information is going to be the difference between whether we survive or whether we become some kind of dystopia. Thank you.
So, as you can notice that was not Obama, right? That was the actor. But we couldn't, if you only saw Obama's video, you would imagine that it was really Obama speaking. And before that was a real attack from the Russians creating deepfakes about the president of Ukraine. So to go back to the definition of deepfakes, deepfakes are a new emerging generation of disinformation that uses machine learning techniques to create audio and video of real people saying and doing things they never said or done. They originated around the end of 2017 from a Reddit user named Deepfakes. So that was the name of the user. The Reddit community, the Reddit Deepfakes, shared deepfakes they created. Many involved celebrities' faces swapped onto the bodies of actresses in pornographic videos. And many journalists and many actresses' careers were ruined because of these pornographic videos that were shared of them. Jean-Luc Dujulet, a professor in the Department of Digital Security at URCOM, says the expression "you have to see it to believe it" is over. I can add the expression "you have to see it or to hear it," because we can also work on sound. To construe it is over. So deepfakes are rapidly becoming indistinguishable from reality. We all know Tom Cruise and Top Gun's video. I don't know if you saw this one on TikTok.
Paris, I don't want to be late to this premiere. We gotta go.
You should always run fashionably late. It's your night.
You're so absolutely beautiful. Thank you. How about that? Am I all primitive else?
Yeah. Congratulations, secrets.
I think we're really getting out of the world.
And people are really gonna believe that we're a couple?
I think most people will believe anyway.
Story of my life.
Alright, now we can start out in this thing, ready?
That sounds.
In the videos I make with Miles Fisher, you don't see Miles Fisher's face, nor do you see Tom Cruise's face. I just overlaid it on top of Miles. The way I train a deepfake is where I tell a computer model to start training on thousands of images of a certain character. In my case, it's Tom Cruise. Thousands of images, all his expressions, all his angles. So in the end, I have like one big model, and it's like one big Tom Cruise model. All of Tom Cruise's emotion is in this model.
Yeah. Every now and then I like to treat myself.
So you can see how almost real they appear. And the technology is advancing so rapidly that even non-existing individuals are brought to life. This person does not exist. And there is a website that is called "This Person Does Not Exist." And the thing is that every time I'm just gonna launch it. So every time we refresh this website, you have new images of people who do not exist. And you can see we have the wide range of ages, of gender, of the color of skin, posture. So you can have different individuals that are created with AI that look as if they are real. And if you're interested, they have their Twitter account where they share the different images that are emerging from, generated from their system. Remember we talked about, like, we saw Tom Cruise, and to be able to do the videos of Tom Cruise, we needed many images, right? Thousands of images to be able to create the deepfake. But now we're evolving so that we can create deepfakes based on one image. So, and this is an example how a lab in Russia was able to animate the Mona Lisa with only one picture. Deepfakes' potential to be weaponized is alarmingly increasing. You will have speeches from presidents that are going to be worked on just a tiny bit altered, with one sentence added, but where everything else seems coherent. Yeah, so you have a speech and you just need to, to add one call for action or one word or something like that, and it would seem as if it's real. But but the message will be infiltrated in the president or any public figure or some person who has power and influence over his or her group. It's going to happen, and it's going to be much more complicated to deal with. What I'm going to share with you now is a deepfake from a group called X Rebellion from Belgium. And what they did, they took the speech from their prime minister, the former prime minister, and they manipulated it so it can be that she's linking the COVID crisis to the ecological crisis.
In de afgelopen decennia hebben we een dramatische toename gezien
van ziekten zoals ebola, Mexicaanse griep, SARS en nu COVID-19. Wetenschappelijk onderzoek toont aan dat deze uitbraken verband houden met de verstoring en exploitatie van de natuurlijke omgeving door de mens.
So individuals who are not aware that deepfakes exist.
Le coronavirus est un signal que nous ne pouvons pas ignorer. Ces pandémies sont un des résultats d'une crise écologique profonde. Les scientifiques, les peuples indigènes et les environnementalistes nous en avertissent depuis longtemps. Nous sommes confrontés à l'effondrement imminent des écosystèmes dont nous dépendons tous pour notre survie. Nous avons échoué en tant que responsables politiques à prendre la mesure de la gravité de la catastrophe écologique. Mais aujourd'hui, la crise du coronavirus nous fait enfin prendre conscience de la profondeur du changement qui sera nécessaire. Nous devons transformer notre mode de vie et ce, dès maintenant.
So a very serious speech, right? And if you don't know that deepfakes exist, you can easily fall into it. And deepfakes, this is one of my other examples. So deepfakes can also alter history, and this is also as alarming. So arts at MIT, they worked on this speech from Nixon, President Nixon. So in 1969, the world gathered to watch the moon landing. It was an extraordinarily risky. Extraordinarily risky. So a backup speech was written in case the mission failed. Thankfully, it was never delivered until now. So what they did is they took that other speech and they deepfaked President Nixon and they delivered the message.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there's no hope for their recovery. But they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble goal, to search for truth and understanding. They will be mourned by their families and friends. They will be mourned by their nation. They will be mourned by the people of the world. They will be mourned by Mother Earth that dared send two of her sons into the unknown.
So, again, a video like this one that could be shared on YouTube and with no really background in any historical event, seeing the president talking or saying such thing, you can, like people, especially youth who that maybe did not have access to the historical event, could actually fall into this. So deepfakes are not only doing, well, everything that I shared to now, they are destroying reputations, as I said, with revenge porn. They are facilitating online child sexual exploitation. They are used for cyber harassing, cyberbullying, blackmailing, committing cybercrime and fraud. Now we have the CEO fraud, where you get a message, an audio message from your CEO asking you to try to do some financial, transactions, and so it's called now the CEO fraud. Disseminating disinformation to targeted audiences, spreading hate speech, inciting violence, manipulating public opinion, falsifying or manipulating electronic evidence for criminal justice investigations, disrupting democratic processes, creating chaos in financial markets. Some researchers are talking about creating false memories because we have an attachment to videos and we have our emotions that are involved, so we can have these new memories that are created, leading to loss of trust and denial of science, leading to disbelief by default, knowing that everything could be faked. Now I will be starting by not believing anything, like even the true stuff. We won't be able to know whether it's real or deepfaked. allowing liars dividends. So I can be filmed now doing a criminal act and simply say that it's not true, this is a deepfake. And my competitors or whoever, they created this deepfake and you have to prove it. So this is also dangerous. And there's this spectrum of deepfake based on the sophistication of the technology. So it can range from cheap fakes, as we heard at the beginning, to really deepfakes more sophisticated based on, again, the technology that is being used. But the thing is that the more the technology is easy to use, the more it's accessible to the public, and the more it's being done and easily produced. So today, anyone can have access to some sort of a deepfake technology, like seriously, anyone. And these are some examples of applications that I used in the project that I will be sharing some of the results with you in a few slides. So the face app, free face, 3D impressions. Wombo, I added TikTok because TikTok also has some features, and it's being used to disseminate deepfakes. So anyone can be a deepfaker, and everyone is at risk of being their targeted victim. I don't know if you heard about the mother who deepfaked videos of her daughter's rivals in the cheerleading team. So what she did, she deepfaked the girls vaping and drinking and nude, and she sent these deepfakes to the parents and to the coach to disqualify the girls. And then, of course, she was caught. But a mother with she has no technical background. She was just having some evil thoughts, and she was able to do that and really shake everyone. So when this information reaches a stage where it is indistinguishable from reality, protecting oneself is no longer sufficient. The manipulation must be stopped. Not only stopped, it has to be countered, because once the message is outlined on social media, if you don't counter it, it's really spreading more fast and more stronger than the COVID that we've been living with. Especially that we're billions on social media. So these are few numbers, and these are only few of the social media platforms. But we are, and when I say we, because I'm part of the people who are actually, almost living on social media, so because of my work, and so I know that we're really very active there, and things that are being shared are immense. So there are many actors who are actively trying to stop deepfake. So there are the manual and automated deepfake detection. The manual require big teams, right? Because it's manual, so you have to have people who will be actually watching and monitoring deepfakes and identifying them. So it requires a lot of manpower and womanpower. The automated deepfake detection is using AI versus AI, but the thing is that the more deepfakers are evolving with it, the more actually the solutions is evolving, the deepfakers are faster and they're clever and they have their agendas. So they're working even harder to be able to find ways around the detection softwares. We have the anti-deepfake measures by online service providers and companies like Facebook and others who banned deepfakes on their platforms. But the thing is that you need to know that this is a deepfake, right? So it can pass by. The legislations, but again, they are more focused on disinformation, less on deepfakes. Education, they are more focused on digital citizenship and finding, again, disinformation in text, photos, but less in videos. And there are awareness-raising initiatives, such as, I don't know if you saw this one. So this is a video from done with Channel 4 of the Queen. In 2020.
For nearly 70 years, I have kept a tradition of speaking to you at Christmas. But on the BBC, I haven't always been able to speak plainly and from the heart. So I'm grateful to Channel 4 for giving me the opportunity to say whatever I like without anyone putting words in my mouth. If there is a theme to my message today, it is trust. Trust in what is genuine and what is not. 2020 has been a challenging year for us all. A year when most of you, thanks to toilet roll shortages, have finally understood how it feels to have a predicament on the throne. One thing that has sustained many of us is our families, which is why I was so saddened by the departure of Harry and Meghan. There are few things more hurtful than someone telling you they prefer the company of Canadians. But at least I still have my beloved Andrew close by. It seems unlikely he'll be heading to North America anytime soon. 2020 has also been a year of heroes, such as our brave NHS workers, many of whom were forced to take incredible risks, like treating Boris Johnson, knowing at any time, as a result, they too could become pregnant. As is so often the case, technology helped tackle the challenges we faced this year. Like many of you, when I wasn't settling down with my husband to Netflix and Phil, as I like to call it, I was perfecting my moves for TikTok. In fact, there's something I'm rather excited to share with you all. I'm under strict orders from Philip not to, but as he's nodded off in front of Home Alone 2, would you mind awfully? You'll have to move that camera back. Everyone ready?
So that was released a couple of hours before the actual speech of the Queen for Christmas, again to raise awareness, but it's not enough. Meta or Facebook launched the Deepfake Detection Challenge in 2019, and it drew more than 2,000 participants, and the top model achieved an accuracy of 65.18%. So you can imagine, right? So we can't really reach the 100%, and this established new shared baseline as the AI community continued to work on this difficult and important task. So since 2020, the work is continuous, right? But we're not there yet. As in many areas, it is easier to be the attacker than the defender. It will be difficult to have universal deepfake detector. And as for the legal actions, no matter how effective legal remedies are, they are applied after the fact. Therefore, they have limited utility in addressing the potential harm that deepfakes can cause, especially given the short time frames that characterize the creation, distribution, and consumption of digital media. So why I'm sharing this with you today is to really bring to you the urgency to work and find solutions to counter these deepfakes together. For that reason, so the context that I shared with you, I'm leading an interdisciplinary team with professors from Université Laval and Concordia University, from education technology, and the School of Design, and research assistants from, again, different fields. So we have journalism, communication, education technology, environmental science, just making sure that I'm not, and the School of Design, not forgetting anyone, and there are BA, Masters, and PhD students. So what we're trying to do is look at youth agency to counterbalance deepfakes as key piece of the puzzle. The thing is that it won't be one solution to counter deepfakes. It has to be a systemic solution. Like, we have to all work together to find ways to raise awareness, but again, raising awareness is not enough. We have to counter the messages that are shared online, because again, if you construe others based on what is being shared online, where will this lead us? We're using PCT, or the personal construct theory, as our theoretical framework. Mostly we're using Kelly's constructive alternativism, Kelly's social equality, and Proctor's relationality theory. We're investigating how youth construe the influence of deepfakes on their knowledge, construction in digital context, and their ability and willingness to counterbalance disinformation. So more in details, our study aims to examine how youth construe the deepfake phenomenon, describe how youth recognize this information and determine how its content is created, the audience it's targeting, the reaction it's trying to achieve, and who is responsible for it, explain how youth construe their role and responsibility in counterbalancing disinformation, discuss potential digital strategies that youth would use to counterbalance disinformation, identify how youth construe the catalysts and inhibitors to their agency to counterbalance disinformation, and all of that to develop recommendations to guide educators, curriculum developers, policymakers in their quest to promote students' critical thinking and agency in the context of disinformation powered by unethical use of digital media, big data, artificial intelligence, and spread through social media. The methodology that we're using, so we're working with youth in different steps. We have 9 hours spending with these youth, and when I say youth, it's really participants between the age of 18 and 24. So what we do with them is we meet them 4 times. The first meeting is an individual meeting where, of course, there are the demographic questions and the introduction, but we go through Kelly's self-characterization technique. And we also use Proctor's PEG with examples of deepfakes. The purpose or the goal of this first interview is to question and analyze one's own construct and behaviors, as well as the behaviors of others in the context of deepfakes. Once we have their reactions and they start reflecting on deepfakes and on their construct and on how they behave and all of that, we take them to a hands-on group workshop. The thing is that you can't really think about deepfakes unless you actually create one and know what it takes to create a deepfake. So we put them in a 3 hours workshop where they actually create a deepfake. After going through the process of creating a deepfake, because it's really like with the technology that we have, and within 3 hours, they also work in groups to reflect on strategies to counter this phenomenon. And then we finish with the individual interview where we go back to the whole process, and we go back also to some questions from the PEG, and we focus on assessing their own skills, willingness, and readiness to counter deepfake based on how they construe, again, their role and their readiness. Kelly's text. I'm just highlighting where the modification that we added. So we added the context. So when the participants encounters fake news or messages appearing to be disinformation online related to the COVID pandemic or COVID-19 vaccination, because we had a lot of disinformation regarding this context. And at the end, I asked them to write the comment or post that they would share online if they were to react to a disinformation in the context of the pandemic or to express their opinion. With the PEG, I used youth as the first group, then we have family, friends, network on social media, and then the deepfakers. And again, we have the different questions that generated with a twist. So as examples of questions, how do you construe, interpret deepfakes? How do you think your family, friends, network on social media construe, interpret deepfakes? But then when it comes to deepfakers, I ask them, how do you construe, interpret deepfakers? And in the range of, like, in the column of deepfakers, we have how do you construe, interpret deepfakers? And then when it comes to family, how do you think your family, friends, network on social media construe, interpret deepfakers? How do you think deepfakers construe, interpret their community of deepfakers? But I also asked them about how deepfakers construe them as audience, but also how they construe their family, the network as audience. And also we have questions about their reactions to deepfakes in the context of COVID, their friends, and how do you construe deepfakers' malicious action in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. So It's the peg with a twist with the question to be able to really go in depth in their deflection. I told you that, shared with you that we asked them to create a deepfake. So the task was a bit complex because I asked them to create a deepfake to educate the general public about deepfake threats in the context of COVID. So it was like, like thinking about how to create deepfake, but it has a good purpose, right? And I'm gonna share with you two deepfakes that was created by the participant. The first one was based on image manipulation. The second one was more about the lip sync, and you will see the difference in the technology, but remember, these are deepfakes created by participants who have zero, that was the first time they ever used the applications, and they didn't even know that would be asked from them. And they did this within the 3 hours, with an introduction at the end and a discussion after, so really in a very short time frame. So that was the first one. And then we have the second one.
Bonjour et bienvenue. Il est aujourd'hui le 4 février et Omicron est de retour.
Omicron, c'est quoi ça? Jamais entendu parler.
Et voilà, comme ça, plus de mandats de vaccination. Ça sert à rien. De toute façon, Omicron, c'est une blague. Omicron is not real.
Est-ce que ça a marché? Ils sont tous morts?
J'ai reçu le vaccin super-héros. Pas besoin du vaccin Covid.
Sniff, sniff, c'est ça, les effets secondaires du vaccin.
Ça, c'est moi avant le vaccin. Et ça, c'est moi après le vaccin. Cette vidéo a été créée par 2 étudiants avec aucune expérience en deepfake ou en hypertrucage. Imaginez ce que des professionnels peuvent faire quand ils veulent vous mener à de la désinformation. Informez-vous bien.
So these are two of the examples that were created by the participants. So moving to the results, and again, this is really the first, some early results. We just started the analysis, and we've been collecting data from 16 participants. We're targeting 25. So first of all, how do youth construe the deepfake phenomenon? What they shared with us, the deepfake phenomenon, this is disinformation, twisted facts, intentional manipulation of facts, lies, scary, disrupting in every aspect, every way, vicious, harmful, violence against a person or a group, violation of integrity, serving a malicious purpose, agenda. It's inevitable, unpreventable, unstoppable. It can lead to crowd manipulation, jeopardize public trust, feed a state of panic, jeopardize public health and safety, hinder societal projects, cause political scandals, change voting intentions, abuse the freedom of expression, amplify a group's extreme ideology, lead to making critical decisions based on wrong and fake information. As opposed to, so what is the opposite of all of that on their construct spectrum here? They said that as opposed to credible information. And when they were asked about what you mean by credible information, they talked about neutral, impartial information, factual, true information, verified, makes sense in current context, presents statistics and citations. How do you construe deepfakers? So for them, they are highly motivated because in order to do a deepfake that is really as close to reality, you need to put effort, right? And to think about the message and to think about your audience and to think how you will disseminate this deepfake. So it's really a lot of effort to spread this disinformation. So they have to be highly motivated. They are unethical, intentional manipulators. They are condescending because they are viewing the audience as, stupid or something. Aware of their wrongdoing but do not care. They are convinced that they detain the truth. They are criminals. They put their own interest over others. They believe in their cause, believe that they are the saviors, abuse the technology, exhibit content for people's intelligence. They target specific audiences, do extensive research, identify relatable, influential, trustful, and or powerful individuals, deepfake, play on private versus public discourses, use well thought out narrative, play on people's fears and or doubts, use content that can be debunked, quite close to reality, use content that resonates with the target audience, including high quality production linked to fake resources, as opposite to what they called as people who have values. So those who respect the other, respect their beliefs, their privacy, the right to their private image, who have honesty, authenticity, benevolence, impartiality, and integrity. About deepfakers, how, according to them, deepfakers construe their audiences. So for them, deepfakers consider their audiences or view them as inferior, vulnerable, gullible, naive, so these are words that the participants use, unsure about their beliefs with weak opinions, mature, old generation, or youth with limited exposure to social media, don't invest time in fact-checking or doing research, everyday people who absorb information, busy people, so they don't have time to do their research, people who don't deserve to make their own decisions, people who would easily spread disinformation, as opposed to people who would employ their critical thinking, ensure consistency between their knowledge of the subject and the information presented, verify references, seek additional information to learn the pros and cons of presented arguments, check the comments under the publications to get a general consensus of perception. And that was actually very interesting because participant talked about like how you would actually either recognize deepfake. Most of them talked about the comments that, so they really rely on the community who comments. Initiate discussions with their network or experts to validate the information. When we talked about their role and responsibilities, first, remember we had the first interview and the last interview. So at the beginning, they were not convinced that it will be our generation that will counter the deepfakes. They said, not my place, not my battle. I won't waste my time, I won't bother. I just keep scrolling, too lazy to act or react. And then we move to, this is a duty. We need to be ready to debate. We need to be ready to go to war. We need to be ready to act radically because they really sensed how easy it was to create a deepfake. But then as we discussed further, they also talked about that, yeah, but it depends. It depends on different variables. So it depends on our level of knowledge, expertise in the topic, level of interest in the topic, seriousness of the topic, and deepfakes impact level. And when we ask further, so their level, they have to be experts in the topic so they can actually react. Or else like the opposite is zero to little knowledge. It has to be related to work, study, or everyday life, or are simply curious about, as opposite to not pertinent to them. Has consequences on them or close others, as opposite to has zero consequences on them or close others, and it has the potential to put people in harm's way, as opposite to a joke, a satire, a ridiculous, one keeps on scrolling. The level of comfort to respond, relationship with the individual sharing the disinformation, openness and reception of those individuals for discussions or other perspectives, level of care about the individuals at risk, and again, when we ask further, so it's safe and a position to risk of backlash, one's place to do something or it's not our place, family, friends as opposed to strangers, co-workers, actively listen as opposed to ignore, dismiss, closed ones, strangers they care about for some reason as opposed to random others. Then they also talked about level of effort, risk of misinterpretations, risk of leading to conflicts, level of drawbacks. So, little time to invest, we already know something about the topic, or it requires research. If it requires research, we're less to actually do something. Receivers get the message as intended, as opposite to receivers interpret the message differently than intended. Receivers accept comments, as opposed to receivers react violently to the comments, and no drawback. And what was really scaring them is that they become the victims of deepfakers. So they didn't want to be at risk of that. But the most common and the most stronger one was their belief in their own impact. So their impact on self and on other. So will I feel good after that, feel proud, or no impact on feeling about self? At least one person responds and stays safe from falling into the disinformation trap, or I would be ignored by all. And one participant said, I'm the dust. Like, you know, like she's really, like she compared herself to a dust. How do you construe the technology behind deepfakes? They talked about the technology as hot, great, unreal, remarkable, impressive, accessible, easy to use, evolves very rapidly, can have positive applications, more a tool than an end itself, but also a manipulation, a weapon, underestimated. And they all agree that it depends on the user. So it depends on the person behind the creation. And they are right, because deepfakes, and now I'm going to share with you some other applications of deepfakes. They are used for seeking justice, for example. In Lebanon, after, I don't know if you've heard about the biggest explosion, for the year anniversary, the MTV station created a deepfake with the victims to remind the population to seek justice for the victims. Saying goodbye to the actor. I don't know if you know Fast and Furious series. So Walker died in a car accident in 2013, and in the middle of filming Furious 7, so the 7th movie in the Fast and Furious series, and the movie was continued.
For 260 shots in the film, we had to complete an authentic performance that was as close as we could imagine to the performance that Paul would have given for the character of Brian O'Connor. On set, a baseline performance was created with Paul's brothers, Kayla and Cody. This gave the filmmakers the ability to direct, light and edit the feature, and also for the other actors to perform and interact with. After each setup, we recaptured the facial performance in an 8-camera photogrammetry array. From this, we could replicate a digital version of the on-set performance.
So the whole movie was continued with the deepfake technology, and now they're thinking about that the coming movies to have the actor actually acting through the deepfake technology. It's also immortalizing artists.
Greetings. I am Salvador Felipe Jacinto Dalí y Domenech, and I am back.
Even though Dali's been gone for 30 years, we're using artificial intelligence to bring it back today. In order to actually train this AI to reproduce Dali's likeness, we've started with finding the right footage of Dali, and then we split that up into frames where he's looking the right way, and we pick the best frames to use for training from that. And our system learns exactly what he looks like and how his mouth moves and how his eyes move and his eyebrows and every little detail about what makes Dali Dali.
This is actually a recreated version of Dali. It's not a person playing Dali with makeup. It is actually Dali. We're very careful to use his words. So that we learn a lot about what he thought and the way he thought.
People want access to art. They want a way in. It can be through technology, through learning about the artist.
Greetings. Welcome.
This technology allows people to imagine for a moment that there is such a thing as immortality, to see Dali alive again.
The whole future of Dali is explained in the brother painting.
I saw Dali, but like his actual form, full figure, speaking personally to me. welcome me to the museum, to use art, and like I still have goosebumps.
It is good to be back.
He talked about the museum and his paintings.
There comes a moment in every big person's life when they realize they adore Dali.
Your life, this moment will also be known
as well today.
Go tell it to your friend.
Mr. Dali, very live.
Before you leave, you will take a picture with me.
Sure.
Alors, 1, 2, 3. Ooh la la! Would you like me to send you this dream photograph? Follow the instructions.
What that adds is a sense of emotion. If they can empathize with this man as a human being, then they can relate to the work much more directly, much more passionately.
To understand the art, you need to understand the artists behind the art. And this technique allows visitors of the Dali Museum to do just that.
If you remember, back in the 80s or something, also advocating for anti-racism with... So that were the first usage of the morphing technology. And now we're also using deepfake to help finding missing persons.
Have you seen this missing person? These so-called deepfake videos are created from still images using artificial intelligence. The technology is helping to boost a new generation of adverts for missing people, aimed at capturing your attention.
We stood there for over an hour. At least 80% of people looked up, and that's all you can ask for.
Remember when we talked about one image? Remember? So it's happening. So what else did youth share? They said the normalization of deepfakes can lead to a highest number of victims, because as you saw, technology can be used for very interesting, very derivative, very like fun ways, but also for good purpose. And when we normalize deepfake, then we won't have our guards up to make sure that we're detecting the disinformation that is being spread. How I can recognize deepfake? Well, it's not to fall into the trap of emotion, or once again, enough to use critical thinking and to question myself with each video I'm confronted with. It's manipulation, I mean. The comparison may be a bit muddy, but it's a bit like violence against women in couples, and we've been talking about it for years. We've been raising awareness for years, and despite that, there are still men who will repeat it, and there are still women who let themselves be subjected to these things in a certain way. But no matter what we do with technology, awareness, there are always people, including me, who will fall into the trap of deepfakes. We need self-confidence and self-esteem so that we feel it. Like, yes, I exist, but I'm not worth much. It's sad to say, but that's kind of the point. If I have esteem and I have confidence in what I believe, in who I am, and to say, the impact it's gonna have. This ideas of telling young people that their voice counts and that they can make a change, we hear it a lot when we were younger, and even today in university, it's really talked about a lot, and it seems like it's like a speech that's a little bit monotonous, there's no real value, it's a little bit of an empty phrase, the way it's presented to us, at least. I don't know how to diffuse situations, to calm people down, know how to relate to people so that they empathy, so that they can understand how or why these people fall for this, so that it's not just like another idiot who falls for that. More understand why he fell for that, then be able to help him. So yes, it was putting myself in the shoes of these people, and I can understand in a way the kind of drive that gives power to change things, but it's still scary. And when last sharing from participants?
What I learned not to trust anything.
and now long story short, definitely, you know, since our first conversation and since the workshops, I've been way more worried about the internet of, you know, conversation. Especially because which is interesting to me, because I already thought I was pretty, like, vigilant on the situation. And I've noticed things that I would have noticed before, like videos on Instagram I was I started seeing myself in a third perspective to see how people would react, and I noticed that even if I'm not necessarily paying attention to it, I'm still kind of breathing, you know, like even if I know it's fake logically, I'm still breathing in those emotions, if that makes any sense, of that video, and it's still letting like affect my kind of like mindset. So, and I started noticing that, and it's like, you know, just because logically you're like, oh, this is fake, doesn't mean that you don't somehow believe the narrative, you know, like, I don't know if it was one of the videos that you showed me, or it was a video I saw about myself, but there was like a video about, you know, like vaccines, not believing in vaccines, which was obviously completely using fake news and everything. But then they were like, I don't want to not travel anymore, I don't want to, you know, be in quarantine. And they were using these things, and I was like, I feel that, you know, like, do I not believe that? And it was this really weird situation. So, so definitely like became more aware, which also scares me.
And I want to leave you with this last message. It is scary, and we still have time, so it would be great if we can discuss this scary thing together, and what can we do to help our youth, but also help our whole societies to be able to be ready and to be equipped to fight, right, and not to fall into this trap, especially that it is evolving very, very, very rapidly. Before I stop, if you're interested in this project, so this is the website of my chair, and this is one of the projects. So this is a project. Just gonna go back and just click on that. So you can see I'm putting the results as we move in it. So we have some publications that are already there, and some of the videos that, so I have the consent of course of the participant to share what they shared with us in the videos. So you can have this in our team. So this page will be updated as we move into the analysis. And now I can go back to my last slide. And thank you.